Good afternoon, Terence, and welcome once again to our Mauritian program on Radio 3 Z.
Thanks for having me back. It's great to be here.
Your given name is Terence, but
Yeah.
as a professional artist, you've
Yeah.
got an artist name. So what is it?
It's Trilagy.
Yep, and how do we write that?
Trilagy, and you pronounce it just like the word trilogy. I just spell it a little bit different.
Now, Terence, we've talked to you before, a couple of years ago, but just to refresh our memory, can you introduce yourself to our listeners?
Sure. My name's Terence, aka Trilagy. We moved to Melbourne years ago now, probably when I was a kid. My parents both from Mauritius, and we've been living in Melbourne for years now. I've been doing music for years and producing singles, doing music videos, and trying to collaborate with artists and doing shows and things and writing my own music. And
when did you start feeling, showing, and developing an interest in music?
Probably would be in high school. I think the first time I performed was probably the talent show, like our high school talent show. After high school, I sort of fell off at music a little bit. I was into sort of basketball. I was really obsessed with basketball. So I was doing that for a few years. And then, a couple of years later after that, I sort of fell back into music and picked up guitar, started, writing my own songs. And I sort of went from there.
And who were the musicians and the singers who inspired you then?
Number one, of course, would have to be Michael Jackson. I think that was everyone's, definitely one of mine. It was funny because, I always loved R&B, but I was into rock for a while. So, really early on, I'd say honestly, it was probably Guns N' Roses at first, but I always had R&B. Then I sort of went from there and I went into a lot of rap, Public Enemy, NWA and things, and artists like that. And a little bit after that, during the times when I was still playing basketball, some friends of mine were very into R&B, and I hadn't heard of a lot of these acts. And a friend of mine had given me a tape by a group called Jodeci, and it was their album Diary of a Mad Band. And ever since then, I was like, this is pretty much, this is what I want to do. I think that album, Diary of a Mad Band, pretty much inspired me to want to write and do my own music and things. And I haven't stopped ever since.
You told us that you played the guitar. Are there any other musical instruments?
I used to sort of do, I don't do it as much now from time to time, but when I make my beats, I used to play a bit of synth, so pianos and a little bit of bass and, drums from time to time. So I like to sort of mess around with all sort of, instruments and try and get the best sounds I can. And it doesn't really matter which instrument. If I need to use it for a certain type of sound that I have in my head, you get sort of like ideas. I just sort of go with whichever instrument. So synths, pianos, drums, bass, you name it. I've probably used it. So
Have you had a tutor, or are you just self-taught?
Writing music and singing, I never had any lessons, to be honest. I just sort of would listen to albums and, kind of copy it and develop my own style. But with guitar and things, I had a few lessons when I was younger. And I always sort of played by ear even before that anyway. So when I went to do my lessons, it was more so to learn, scripted, like on paper notes and, how to read music and things like that. But I did that for a little while, but mostly I sort of did, most of this on my own, sort of like just, playing by ear and, learning of other artists and what music I was listening to.
Yeah. And when did you start writing your own music?
Probably, I want to say around high school time, I think it was, probably around high school, just after high school. I'd always sort of like, wrote short stories and things like that. So I always was writing. So I think it just sort of developed, into the songwriting. And probably around the time I was a teenager, could have been as early as 12 and just sort of would write down little melodies and little sentences that I had in my head. And I guess that, eventually I developed those into songs.
And what was the first song that you released?
To be honest, I'm not too sure if I can remember the very first song I released, but the very first few demos I released were under the moniker of Protege.
Any more songs after that?
Yeah, sure. Under Protege, I had a fair few, but they all sort of demo things. But as I developed into, as an artist, I sort of had other albums, Revolutionary Blues, and I had a few other singles that sort of came out that are out there and things. I've always been writing, even before my trilogy stage at the moment. So yeah.
You tell us that you've just released another one. What can
Sure.
you tell us about that last one?
My new single, you meant? Yeah.
Your new single, yes.
Yeah, the song's called Extraordinary. I wrote this song about a year ago, and it was after I got the music from a producer called Five, the producer. He sort of sent me a beat, and as soon as he sent me the beat, I heard the line, the first line to the verse, the "Hey there, baby, it's nice to meet you." I heard that straight away. In my head, so yeah, and then I wrote this song pretty much straight away after I heard the beat. The melody just sort of came to me like that. And basically I wrote this song when you meet someone that you sort of had an unexpected, instant connection with, I think it's always been like that. It's very rare that you have a great rapport with someone and a great vibe, like like you've known them your whole life. And it's, I always thought that, and I think it always has been very rare and still is. So, yeah. And it's also about, sometimes that, the people like that can be taken for granted, and sometimes, they can be underrated and unrecognized. So it's about recognizing that these people that have a good rapport, a good vibe, and might be in a relationship and might not be noticed for that.
Yep. And on what platforms has this song been released?
Yeah, it's on all digital platforms right now. So Spotify, Tidal, iTunes, YouTube, pretty much all the main digital platforms, any digital platforms really. And Spotify especially, people should make sure to go follow the links and follow the page and add it to your playlist and everything.
Let's talk about your performances now. I mean, in public. Can you talk about them? When did you start performing and where?
Yeah, like I said, probably the first one was high school, but after that, I'm in Sri Lanka, all around Melbourne. I've been doing a lot of clubs for the last few years, and just more recently, just before lockdown, I was doing a lot of shows and events at the Drum Theatre in Dandenong, did the season launch for their theatre opening, and a little bit of I don't know if you want to call it a residency, but a bit of a few performances at Our Beat, which is our drum theatre as well, which is like once a month.
You also performed at Crown Casino?
Sure, yeah. That would have been, actually, I did a show there I think it would have been about a year and a half ago now. I think that was for the release of Where I'm At, or one of the singles. And yeah, that was at Crown Casino. That was for a showcase. So there was me and there was a few other talented artists that did that performance as well. Yeah, that was for 808, I think it was, or the 808 Nights. It was called 808. So yeah, that was probably about a year and a half ago. Yeah.
And how has lockdown affected you? One thing is certain, you can't perform live in public. So
yeah, exactly.
What do you do instead? What does a musician do during lockdown?
Well, it's funny you say, because I always sort of thought, like, either way you're still going to be home. I mean, at home or in a studio. So I've pretty much just been doing, the same I've been doing, like either recording or writing at home and releasing online. I mean, you still release digitally anyway. So I've just been doing that, not like you're saying, obviously, minus the shows, because Melbourne's in lockdown now. So just minus the shows. But I've just been sort of, still writing and demoing ideas and still trying to get to sort of more songs and more tracks and, collaboration projects, whatever I can, just at home.
A personal question now.
Sure.
How do you write a song? What comes first? Is it music or is it the lyrics?
I wouldn't even say, I would say neither, because with me, usually, I don't even have lyrics. Like a lot of artists say this as well. It's like usually how I start, I get a beat, I get music, and if the beat sort of talks to me per se, I get sort of like melodies in my head, and then I just kind of mumble stuff, words, random words, right?
A bit of both at the same time, music and...
Yeah. I don't really get really coherent sentences. I just focus on getting the melody out. So whichever way I've got to get that out, you know, whether it's mumbling or sometimes I might get a clear, like with Extraordinary, I got like a clear sentence. Sometimes it's just like that. But it usually does start with like, I'll hear the music first and then I'll sort of mumble some lines and freestyle. And that's usually most of the stuff that I record. Even with Extraordinary, I was freestyling a lot of the sentences, and then, you know, I might sort of change something here and there, might keep some stuff. And yes, it's sort of, it usually for me goes like that. A lot of people, you know, everyone's different. Some people will write lyrics and then they'll get the music behind it. But usually for me, it's the other way around. I'll get the music first and then I'll go with the lyrics. So, yeah.
And roughly how long would it take to complete a song?
Sometimes it's super quick. And sometimes, you know, not that I would say it's slow, it's just that, you know, as musicians, you know, you sort of you might do a piece of music here and then you have other things to do and then you come back to it. So it can be really quick, like, you know, it can be a day. Like I've written songs in a day and kept, you know what I mean? Like, and then sometimes it can, you know, it can go over a few months, you know, depending if you're sort of leaving it, coming back and then, you know, and so forth. So.
Yeah, and depends on the moment too, and depends on the inspiration.
Exactly. Yeah, it depends on the moment. Sometimes it just hits you, and like I've had songs where when you're really inspired, like, you know, which isn't always, you know, you have to catch that inspiration. It's like you really have to catch that as soon as that moment hits, and then in those instances you can write songs, you know, maybe an hour, you know, maybe even less. But it depends if the inspiration.
Any performances, Terence, planned for after lockdown?
A whole lot. I had a whole bunch of stuff that was planned. But like I was saying, you know, obviously we've had to postpone. But I'm hoping I can do some more stuff with Albeat at the Drum Theatre. I had a couple of mini sort of tours happening with some local artists that we had organised. That'll be local and possibly interstate. And then also we had the Liberian Awards I was supposed to be performing at this year. That's, you know, obviously been postponed. I was really sad about that. But, you know, what can you do? So, yeah, got a whole bunch of, and there's a lot more, but again, we're sort of waiting to see how we go sort of with it, you know, in the new year. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's beyond our control. So
of course, yeah.
We can just wait and see what happens.
Wait and see, yeah, sure.
After this interview, we're going to listen to your last song. What's the title of that song again?
This song's called Extraordinary. This is my brand new single, Extraordinary, that's out now. It's a neo-soul mixed with a little bit of jazz, R&B, and a little bit of trap and hip-hop. Pour toute ma famille dans l'Australie et toute ma famille dans Maurice, I hope you enjoy my brand new single, Extraordinary.
Terence, thank you very much for your time. We wish you all the best with your music and your musical career.
Sure. Thanks for having me again.
Hey there, baby, it's nice to meet ya. I'm already thinking about things that we could do. In my mind on the sounds of our Ibiza. Really don't matter, just as long as I'm with ya. You are now rocking with the best picture. Your hair rested on my chest. Girl, I'm a hustler, no doubt. But let me show you what I'm all about. No time for games, let's get to the real. You ain't gotta play, show me how you feel. Girl, you're so sublime. Girl, you're so fine. Girl, you're so sublime. Girl, you're so fine. Extraordinary, girl. Girl, they don't know if you know. Girl, you're so extraordinary, girl. And girl, they don't see you go. Girl, you're so extraordinary, girl. Girl, I said they don't know, you know. Girl, you're so extraordinary, girl. They don't really know the thing about you, but they watching everything that you do. Girl, you're so fly, and you know it's true. Hoping that you feel the same for me too. But I know that you're feeling me. Baby girl, it's plain to see. Baby girl, it's plain to see. It's plain to see. Girl, you're so extraordinary, girl. Girl, I said they don't know, you know. Girl, you're so extraordinary, girl. And girl, they don't see you, oh. Girl, you're so extraordinary, girl. Girl, I said they don't know, you know. Girl, you're so extraordinary, girl. Real, recognize real. Girl, I see you. Yeah, yeah. Girl, I see you. Girl, I see you. Girl, I see you. Real, recognize real. Yeah, yeah. Girl, I see you. Girl, I see you. Girl, you're so extraordinary, girl. And I said they don't know, you know. Girl, you're so extraordinary, girl. And girl, they don't see, you know. They don't see you extraordinary, girl. And girl, they don't know, you know. Girl, you're so extraordinary, girl. Girl, you're so extraordinary, girl. Girl, you're extraordinary, 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 girl. And girl, they don't see, you know. Girl, you're so extraordinary, girl. And girl, they don't know, you know. Girl, you're so extraordinary, girl.
La chanson Extraordinary, interprétée par Trilagy, a fait suite à l'entrevue avec le chanteur.